Is buying a home even worth it anymore? This is a common thing I hear from lots of people that approach me as a realtor here in Winnipeg, asking whether or not it's worth it for them to purchase a property, both as a primary residence or as an investment property. So today we're going to compare renting versus owning, and if Winnipeg real estate investing is still a good investment. Okay, so let's talk about renting in Winnipeg. Now, it would be really easy to just pull the average rental rate in Winnipeg as a whole and compare it to the average house price in Winnipeg as a whole, but I'm not gonna do that because I don't wanna just give a generalized picture that a lot of people don't think is fair, because the average rent in Winnipeg right now is just over $1,200. And if you are an average person who is educated, looking to buy a property, and is contemplating whether or not it's really worth it anymore, you are gonna have a hard time finding a place to live for that cheap. Okay, and so we're gonna look at a realistic scenario for a single individual who is working a full-time job, or a couple or a small family who's working full-time income, and compare that in both renting and owning. And another thing to consider before we get into this is that there is some subjectivity to all of it, because we're not going to be considering frugality in this analysis. We're not going to be finding the best deal on a rental property or finding the best deal on a house that is going to be better than the sort of median. And so what we're going to do is we're going to narrow in on the southern half of Winnipeg. And so that's going to be everything south of the Assiniboine River and sort of the St. Boniface, St. Vital area. Okay, so the average rent for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment in the south end of Winnipeg is around $1,600 to $2,000 per month. Now this is for an apartment, not for a house, not for a top level of a duplex, just for an apartment. Okay, and the reason I'm including a range is because I do think it's helpful, because like I said, depending on how comfortable you want to live, that could really change your rent cost. Okay, typically you will have to pay some sort of utilities, and we're going to say that's about $100 a month for an apartment, bringing the total of your living costs to about $1,700 to $2,100. And again, we're omitting anything like Wi-Fi or phone plans or other stuff that is living costs, but it's not housing costs, so we're not going to include that in any of our analysis. Your annual housing cost is going to be anywhere from $20,500 up until $25,000 per year. Okay, so now in order to get an accurate analysis of what we can buy with that same monthly housing costs, we're actually going to reverse engineer this a bit and find houses that you could purchase that would have the same approximate monthly cost as you would if you were renting, rather than looking at what your budget would be to get a similar unit. So I did come up with an equation here that factors in your mortgage payment, which is both your principal and your interest, your property taxes, your house insurance, and your utilities. Now, your utilities will range depending on the size of the house, but we're gonna say it's about $200 for your water, hydro, and gas bill every month on average. And then for the other three, they're all dependent on the value of your house. As your house price goes up, your insurance and your property tax and your mortgage payments obviously go up as well. And so through this, I was able to take an average insurance rate, use the property tax equation that we're given from the city and how they calculate property taxes, and use a mortgage payment calculator and combine them and all make them a function of the value of your house to get this equation. We are making some assumptions in this analysis, which is a 5% interest rate, 25-year amortization period, and putting 10% down on a property. We're not doing 20, we're not doing 5, we're gonna kind of go in the middle here because we're trying to avoid the extreme cases. Okay, and this does factor in the added CMHC insurance for your property value, because that is also a function of the total debt you have on the property, which is a function of the total value of the property, because we're only putting 10% down every time. So from this equation, we could find out that if you want to pay $1,500 a month, you could buy a house that's around $230,000. If you want to go up to $1,600, it's $245,000, etc. Here are the rest of the numbers, and you will notice that it goes up approximately $15,000 for every $100 you increase in your living expenses. So if we look at detached homes only in this specific area of Winnipeg, here is how many total listings were sold, just sold in the past year, so in 2023, for under or at this price range. Okay, so once you get all the way up to $1,900 a month, because keep in mind, we're subtracting the $200 for our utilities, you're looking at about $291,000 for a house, and there was 263 houses that met that criteria. which in my opinion, it's not great. It is a lot lower than we'd like, but it definitely is possible. I will say that it is getting tougher to find a house in these price ranges because there is no inventory. And this is due to a lack of supply from new builders not building these types of homes. But I did want to look and see what this type of home is like for these price ranges. One thing to keep note of too is that when looking at this data, this is also for sold homes at the final price. So it's not list price. So this does include any sort of bidding wars that would have happened. So you can know that if you're buying a house at $290, this isn't factoring in that it went $40,000 over asking and sold at $330. No, this was sold at $290 or lower. Okay, so the average home here, based on the median, is about 900 square feet. It's 2 bedrooms and 1 bath, which conveniently is the exact same as our apartment was. And you're probably getting a very similar square footage. The only bonus is that most of these houses did have a basement, so you get that extra space. The average age of the house was 1930, so it is quite an old home. And about 60% of these homes did have a garage, so you do get that extra garage space as well. So to kind of summarize this, I do think that while it may be harder than it ever has been to get into a home, it is still very possible if you are a regular working individual at a 9-to-5. And one big thing that we didn't really talk about is the maintenance or the capital expenditures that come with owning a house. But I didn't want to get into that because, again, that really depends on the type of house you buy. And that's really up for you and your real estate agent to discover and purchase a good property that's going to have less maintenance down the road. You can also have your realtor negotiate for you so that you can help offset some of those expenses right away when you do purchase the property. However, what I also didn't include is from a financial impact. When you purchase a home and you're paying off your mortgage, you're actually gaining some of that money back in the form of your loan pay down, and your house is going up in value through appreciation. Now, when you rent, you don't get any of your money back, and even though you pay mostly interest at the start of your loan, you do get some of it back over time. And so I do think that that kind of offsets the maintenance and the capital expenditures at the beginning when we're just considering a smaller ownership window. Over the long period, your appreciation and your loan pay down are gonna be way more than you could ever get in maintenance issues, unless you're rebuilding the entire house. So that's it for the renting versus owning comparison. In the next video, in part 2, we're gonna compare owning versus stock investing or other more traditional forms of investing to see if investing in real estate in Winnipeg is actually still viable and if it's actually still a good investment or not. Thanks for watching. My name's Cody. I appreciate you being here. Look forward to seeing you in the next one.